Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. I'm so mad at my father in law. I despise him with every cell of my body and just want to ban him from my house and never see him again. If I could, I would like to stop him from ever visiting my house or meeting my kids. He used to just annoy me in the past, but this time he's really gone and done it. He's managed to make me blow my top and there's no going back. I just want to know if the people here agree with me that he's an a-hole or not. Since I have experienced all the things, I know it's completely possible for my opinions to be biased and that I was maybe overreacting, but I really doubt that's the case, so y'all should judge the incident that happened. My husband is the person who works, and I'm a housewife. I quit my job soon after I got married and had kids. I wanted to be a stay at home mom and raise my kids. When we were looking for a house to buy, my father in law told me that a house just went up for sale in his neighborhood and we should get it so we can all stay together. My husband was really excited about the idea, and I didn't mind at that time because it's a really good neighborhood. So we moved here, and I quit my job and decided to stay at home. That's when difficulties between me and my father in law started arising. He started taunting me and calling me a freeloader. Even after my husband talked to him, his behavior didn't change much. I was determined to not let him get on my nerves and just pretended to laugh it off every time. But a couple of weeks ago, when my father in law decided to throw a party, he invited the whole neighborhood. Even my husband and kids were there. I found out from my neighbors when they were getting ready to leave and saw me in the lawn watering the plants. They asked me why am I still there and why haven't I gone down to the party. I asked them which party and they told me that my father-in-law was throwing one. I was flustered to find it from them and made the excuse that I wasn't feeling well. When my husband came back with the kids, he asked me why I didn't go and I told him I wasn't invited. He said that's weird because the whole hood was there. Now, I was really pissed. This was him crossing lines by forcefully excluding me. I was determined to take revenge. I couldn't just sit tight and ignore his tactics anymore. Last weekend, I decided to throw my own party. It took a little convincing to get my husband to agree, but I finally did it. I made the guest list and invited everyone but my father in law to give him the taste of his own medicine. I didn't tell my husband about it, though. When people started coming and the party was in full swing, my husband came looking for me and asked me where Dad was. There was no point in lying to him since he's well aware of how I go about things, so I told him the truth and said that his dad always hated me and made sure I felt pathetic, so I had to retaliate this time and he should let me handle the situation my own way now because he had already tried talking to his dad and that got us nowhere. My husband did look a little pissed, but let the matter go since it was just a party and nothing major. Soon I was able to relax and just enjoy the day. It was perfect because the kids were busy playing with their friends and I could not worry and just relax. But soon we heard some sirens. The patrol car stopped near our house and my husband went out to ask the officers what was wrong. We saw my father-in-law getting out of one of the cars. I realized he was about to do something major and quickly went down the driveway to listen to what was happening. The officer was saying that they had received a complaint that this house party was giving out drugs to the guests and they are here to officially check things for themselves. I couldn't believe it. My father-in-law went to such lengths just to ruin my party. How could he be this petty? Didn't he realize that his own grandkids were here? Meanwhile, my husband was trying to talk to the officers, but to no avail, since they are legally required to check every case of drug suspicion. Since no one was allowed to leave the area, everyone stayed in the house or on the lawn while the officers checked the whole house. It was really troublesome not only for us, but also for our neighbors. All the while, I was glaring daggers at my father-in-law. I was so pissed that I could have gone violent right there if not for my kids and husband. It took the officers about 2 to 3 hours of searching to make sure that nothing was suspicious and marked the report as false suspicion. Once they were gone, we let everyone go home. My husband told me he'd call the cleaners the next day so I don't have to worry about the mess, and we should just go inside and try to relax since it was already getting late. Since that day, I haven't talked to my father in law or anyone else for that matter. I was completely humiliated in front of the whole neighborhood, and I didn't think I could even look at my father in law without blowing my top. I told my husband that this has gone far enough and that I don't want my kids or him to ever meet that man again, and if he refuses me, I'll take the kids and leave. I'm also planning to look into more houses. Now, is my reaction really over the top and am I making a big fuss out of nothing? Do you think I'm being an a-hole here? My husband did tell me that he can't just up and leave his family, but he was going to put his foot down because his father had gone very far this time. He said this isn't his usual behavior and he can't understand why in the world he would hate me so much that he would compromise his own grandchildren's childhood by sending officers to our house. I don't care about whatever my husband says or does now because I know for a fact that I won't put up with the antics of my father in law anymore. If he doesn't stop anymore, I am going to have to take extreme measures, steps that would definitely get me labeled as a bitch and an a hole. My husband finally talked to his dad one last time. He invited him over for drinks and brought up the conversation subtly. He asked him why he went to such limits last time as to send cops to his own son's place. His dad said that he didn't really have a choice. He had been trying really hard to make his son understand that I'm someone who would ruin this house and his children. He told him that a freeloader like me, who doesn't work or contribute anything to the home, is not worth his son's love, and he should just let me go. I was glad to hear my husband sound disrespected at those words because if he hadn't stood up for me right there, I would have really hurt his father. The absolute disgrace of his words was so disappointing that I didn't even know where to begin. My husband told his father that he should stop talking as he had crossed the limit, and if he cannot bring himself to respect his wife, then we'd have no choice but to cut all ties with him. He told him that he loved me and that I'm a great mother to his children and a great wife, and if his father can't see it, then there's no need for him to visit us or stay in our lives. My father in law was shocked after hearing these words. He stared daggers at me before telling his son how disappointed he is in him and walking out of the house. That day, the mood was very sour, and neither me nor my husband said much of anything, except that we're going to have to stop all contact with father in law if he didn't apologize. I'm glad to finally have my husband's support. I think now I can finally stand my ground when I retaliate to the tactics of my father in law. And if things don't improve, we won't have any choice but to move away. I wrote about my father in law and how much he hates me in my original post. I even posted an update after that, and many of you were curious about how things were going after so many months have passed. Sadly, to update you guys, I can't say that much has changed with my father in law. After my husband's outburst, my father in law did stay quiet for a while and didn't talk to either of us much. He only came to visit his grandchildren and sometimes even took them out for snacks. But our relationship continued to be strained. The looks he gave me clearly told me that he still thinks of me as dirt on his soles. Things got so difficult that it was hard for us to stay in the same room. We couldn't stand each other even in public, and rumors, which had a lot of truth to them, were going around in the neighborhood. I had no choice but to ask my husband to consider moving to a different neighborhood. I don't want my kids to grow up in such a toxic environment. My husband agreed with me, and we finally moved last month. We got a fresh start here, and things are finally great. I was able to focus on raising my kids, and I didn't feel as much mentally exhausted as I used to. We threw a housewarming party 2 weeks ago and even ended up inviting a few of our friends from the old neighborhood. But we have cut all ties with my father in law. He is no longer allowed to meet us or our kids. We don't talk about him anymore and are focusing on living our lives. NTA, I don't think you're the a-hole here. It's completely fine for a married woman with kids to be a stay-at-home mom, and there was no room for your father-in-law to shame you for that choice. Raising kids is not an easy job, and if he can't understand the importance you have, then I say you should just leave him behind. NTA, I think your father in law is the real a hole here who has no right to call the cops on you just because he doesn't like you. It was a crappy move. And if I was at your place, then I would have put him in his place a long time ago. I don't know how you managed to show as much patience with him as you did, but I really think he doesn't deserve any of that. I'm 24-year-old male, have twins, 8 male and female, who I obviously had very young. Their mom was my first girlfriend and got pregnant with them when we were freshmen in high school, 14, 15. She came from a very well off family whose public appearance meant everything to them. She was on board with keeping them, but a few months after giving birth, she and her parents told me that they wanted to give them up for adoption because they didn't want the babies to mess up her future. I wouldn't agree to it, and that resulted in her signing away her parental rights, moving away, and blocking me on everything. I tried to reach out to her and her family multiple times over the years, up until the twins were 3. I continued to be the best dad I could be without her, even though it was extremely hard, and even made it through college with them. My sophomore year of college, I met a great girl who's now my wife and has taken on the mother role for my kids. They love her. I love her. It's great. She legally adopted them after we got married, and everything has been going so good. About 3 months ago, I received a call from a number that seemed familiar, but I couldn't remember who it could be. When I answered, it was my kids' bio mom asking about them. I immediately told her that it wasn't her place to ask about them and they have a mom, and to lose my number. Since that day, I've gotten calls, texts, and voicemails from random numbers, and they're all from her. I never answer or respond to them. A little over a week ago, I was out with my wife and kids when their bio mom approached me. When I realized it was her, I pulled her away from them and told her she needs to leave me and my family alone. She immediately started sobbing and telling me how sorry she was and how all she craves is motherhood and that she was young and dumb and just wants her babies back. I told her that I didn't care. She made her bed now, she needs to lay in it, and that if she contacted me again, I would be filing a restraining order against her. We parted ways and I took my family home. My wife didn't ask questions until the kids were asleep, and that's when I told her about the calls and texts. We talked about everything, and my wife told me that I was being unfair to her for punishing her for a choice that she made and probably didn't have a say in at 15. She wants me to give her a chance to at least explain everything, but I don't feel like I want to do that. Raising 2 kids as a kid myself was hard, and I did it with very little help. I don't feel that I should give her a chance to explain her decisions, but my wife says it's unfair not to allow an explanation. AITA? I would like to add that my kids are fully aware that my wife isn't their biological mother. She's been in their lives since they were 4. Also, since they've understood the concept of a mother around 3-ish, they were a bit curious as to who their biological mother is, and I've never hid it from them. I did my best to explain that situation to them in a way that they would understand. I would always show them pictures and stop shortly after I met my wife. I've talked to my personal therapist, as this situation has been extremely stressful for me to handle because it's felt like years of suppressed emotions are resurfacing. With the advice of my therapist, my wife and I will be meeting with their mother to at least hear her out. I'll try to update again once we meet. Appreciate the advice from you all. NTA at all, and I would not entertain letting her have any contact. The situation would be different if she had contacted you periodically over the years, or at least when she turned 18, 21, to express regret or ask how they were doing. But she said nothing for 8 years, even when OP tried to contact her. If her family was able to control her until she was 24, you don't want someone like that in you or your kids' lives. NTA, she gave up the kids for adoption. It's basically the same as having a closed adoption. You can't waltz back in 8 years later and be like, oh, I crave motherhood, like they are some sort of snack you can fill up on whenever it suits you. She can wait until they're 18, like anyone else who gives up their kids. I get she was young, but she's 24 now. She had, at the very least, the last 6 years to try contact you. Instead, she lived her life, and now that all the school and being young, wild, and free is done, she thinks she can pick up where she left off? Think not. My son's dad abandoned him, and I am an 18-year-old mom. And when my husband wanted to adopt my son, his bio dad, after having zero contact for 6 years, said no. I didn't care. I pushed it anyways. My son better not have some flake in his life. NTA, you don't owe that woman a thing. She and her family made a decision years ago, and it was to not be a part of the children's lives. She now regrets it and wants to be their mom. No. They have a mother who has been there day in and day out and is legally their mother. What happens if they meet this woman and next week, month, year, she decides that being mom isn't for her and vanishes? Kids need stability and predictability. Document everything and file a restraining order if necessary. Explain it to your kids when they're old enough to understand and make a choice of their own. If you let this woman in now, there's no telling what she will want next. It could be a slippery slope. I'm a 22-year-old female and have a very big family. I have 3 step siblings and 4 half siblings. I am one of the older ones. I go to medical school and moved out 2 years ago. Since my parents, mother and stepfather, have so many kids to take care of, they aren't able to help me out financially as much. They do pay for my education, which is about $3,000 per year, just like they do for the other kids. I have a job and use student loans to pay for all of my expenses. Due to COVID and other reasons, the kids that go to college, 4 of us in total, including me, have some delays. So next year, I still have to pass 3 classes. This isn't a lot, so I am planning on working extra shifts and maybe I'll go on a trip or something like that. The other kids in college have more classes to do next year, so they aren't able to do these things. I was planning on using the extra money that I am going to make due to working extra shifts for all of my expenses so that I don't need to use student loans anymore. When I told my parents about my plans for the upcoming school year, they suggested that I pay for my own education now since I am going to be working a lot more. I personally find this quite unfair since they're still paying for everybody else's. So just because I pass more classes than my siblings, I'm getting their financial help taken away? When I said this to them, they disagreed and said that I just need to set different priorities next year. I was quite upset, but decided to let it go since it's their money at the end of the day. So this summer, we were going on a family trip. My parents are paying for everything, but they asked the kids over 18 to pay half of the plane tickets, which is about 200 euros. I was totally fine with this, but now that my parents have decided to not financially support me anymore, I've decided to not come along. I wasn't very excited about this trip in the first place, but I still decided to go because I didn't want to disappoint my parents' siblings. But now that they've said that, just need to set different priorities next year, that's exactly what I am going to do. Those 200 euros can cover my books for the next semester. When I told them I wasn't coming anymore, they were furious because I was going to ruin our last family trip together, etc. My siblings are divided on the matter. So, AITA? NTA, you set your priorities like they asked. Stick with them. NTA, they want you to be more responsible with your money, so you are. You have decided to save that money and put it toward your semester. Makes sense to me.